Well, Jim, the pain...
speaking of hurting, what other damage did Dave do to the wrestling business? Who else is in this thing?
All right, well, let's go back to the 2025 class of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. With 294 votes, the most votes anyone received, and 65.5% of the votes from his region, CM Punk is now a Hall of Famer.
And this one had to just gall Dave because he couldn't, no matter what he did. He tried the poison pen letters and the public slander and all the other stuff, and he tried to sway the people, and even his own crowd still voted Punk into the Hall of Fame that actually doesn't exist. But still, did you see when Dave describes who got in and he starts talking about Punk, he spends 2 sentences talking about Punk's career between ROH and quitting the WWF and going into UFC. 2 sentences, and then a long paragraph about all the problems he caused not wanting to work with Colt Cabana and AEW and how all that whole thing ultimately is his fault, even though other people acted badly as well. He can't get over it. He's still pitching the fucking story. And this is a quote, he was easily the biggest short-term star in AEW, although one could make the case that in the long run, he hurt the promotion. His arrival and first few months were the business peak, and he was the key reason for it, as his return to wrestling after more than 7 years led to AEW's popularity and pay-per-view peak. But the tenure otherwise was a failure, based on an inability to work with Colt Cabana. And then he goes on for another 2 paragraphs and he just couldn't treat Paige right. He agreed not to say bad things about the Buckaroos and Kenny, so he turned his focus to Adam Page. After Page went into business for himself and brought a knife to a gunfight and couldn't outshoot promo CM fucking Punk with his mush mouth fucking oatmeal bullshit. Why? He can't leave this alone, can he? Even his own people voted the guy in, and instead of just saying, okay, he's one of the biggest stars and needle movers of the modern era, and how could you not vote him in the Hall of Fame if he's up for it? He's still got to fucking try to pass this bullshit off so that the Hardley boys don't get pissed at him and don't invite him over to the trampoline. Is that as see-through as it looks to me?
I mean, he wasn't just the biggest short-term star in AEW history. He was the biggest star in AEW history.
Star.
Period. And it didn't have to be short-term. It was because of the conditions that Tony created and allowed to fester. And the fucking ridiculous games. And for everyone who said, let's see how angry Punk gets in WWE, I don't think I've ever seen him as happy as he seems. And it's not just because he's making lots of money.
He's so happy he's killed his gimmick. He's the smiling ice cream man, for fuck's sake.
And I don't think it's just because he's making lots of money. I think he's actually enjoying what he's doing. So it didn't have to go the way it went in AEW. But again, there were lots of games, and he didn't put up with it.
But is this as see-through as it looks to me, to the average viewer, that Dave still cannot leave this alone, and he's still got to push that story, even though it's bullshit, to take up for his buddies?
You know, in Dave's point of view, Punk was in the wrong too. When multiple people stormed in the dressing room, and one of them may have lunged at him, that he did anything about it. Surprised he hasn't ripped Larry in the Observer yet. For his
he don't have the balls.
No, but again, biggest star in AEW history. It could have gone on longer. They screwed it up. And you could argue that that screw up cost the company more than anything else, because whether you thought Punk was right or wrong, it sent a message about the behavior behind the scenes and about the leadership or lack thereof in the company. That's what everyone noticed.
And I don't think that the Buckaroos have never recovered from that, because the people blamed them and their childishness for Punk being gone. And that's what pretty much started the fact that nobody gives a shit whether they burst into flame or fucking turn blue or not anymore. I mean, their own boringness and smarminess have something to do with it, but they sent Perry away to Never Neverland to make knives and license plates or whatever for a year because people were pissed at him and his little fucking scrawny neck. Anywho, but Punk made the Hall of Fame so he can retire happy now. He's in the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame. I wonder if he's throwing a party. Chicago deep dish pizza.
You know, I'll just say, to be consistent, I'm not necessarily a fan of putting him in or the next person we're about to talk about or a few years ago.
While they're still active?
Yeah. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm not saying he doesn't have the credentials. I'm just saying he's still maybe not in the middle of his career, but he's having a career resurgence, which I think has only added to his, if not the thing that put him over the top, it's added to his credibility as a Hall of Famer. But he's still in the middle of his career. He's still doing it.
And Dave's, and I can see this. I can actually see the logic in this. Dave's thing is nobody in wrestling ever retires, so we would never be able to vote anybody in the Hall of Fame if we didn't take active wrestlers. So I guess I can say they do have to be active for some period of years, 20 years or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. But again, this whole thing is flawed anyway because it is a cross-section of people that he chooses from his readership and social circle. And so even if you're going to have, you need some type of consistency. If you're going to have active wrestlers, Punk got in. Another guy we're going to talk about here in a second got in. But Orton's way down the list, and we've already talked about Gran Hamada and Dory Dixon. So there has to be some kind of consistency when you're talking about major stars that have had similar accomplishments and similar longevities, but one guy doesn't work the style that Dave is a proponent of.
Yeah. Or doesn't get along with the right people. And again, with Punk, I'm not saying he's not a Hall of Famer. I just don't like the idea of putting people in while they're actively active. I guess the best way to put it for a wrestler. But it must also...
when they're hyperactive.
Hey, real quick before we move on to the next person, I'll bet you I know the next reclamation project. The next person who's going to have write-ups about their drawing ability and everything else. Jon Moxley's all the way down the list after Roy Welch.
Is he? Wait a minute. Is he on this?
He's after Roy Welch. Roy Welch did better than Jon Moxley amongst this.
Well, as he should, but I didn't even see the fucking name. Where is?
After the Steiners, after Jim Johnston.
Oh, well, see, Roy Welch in my eyes is way too low and Moxley's way too high. So, yeah, he's gonna have to drum up some support for Dick the Boozer, or elsewise he's gonna hear all kinds of bad things from Renee Moxley. Good.